The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Offenberger from AfterMarketer Club, and welcome to our webinar, How to Set Your Marketing Budget and Where You Should Spend It. You know, in all of our travels across the country, speaking to different groups and organizations, and also hosting our radio show, this is one of the more popular questions that we're asked. And so our hope today is to give you information that will help guide you down the road to establishing your marketing expenditures that drive your business objectives, and we hope to give you some guidance as to where you might spend your money to get the kind of return and the results that you'd like to have. During the course of our webinar today, of course, as always, if you have any questions, please, there's a chat window there. Enter your question into the chat window. Our objective is for you to get full value out of our time together today. So you came to this webinar wanting specific information. I want to make sure you get it. Please, during the course of the webinar, use the chat window. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. We are going to make a copy of this available a little bit later online as well. So with that, let's get going. Happy holidays to each and every one of you. I hope 2011 has been a fabulous year for you. I hope 2012 just really exceeds your expectations. What we're going to cover: how to set your marketing budget, where to spend your marketing dollars, and then I want to answer some questions. So let's get kind of to the meat of the matter. For those of you that have not been part of our call, we've been fortunate enough to serve the automotive industry since 2007. We are hired by many organizations, trade associations, and different industry groups to come speak at events to teach online marketing best practices. We provide services, marketing services, to companies just like yours, as well as free resources, a blog, and a lot of other things that I'll share with you a little bit later that are free tips that you can use that help you in the day-to-day marketing of your business. Let's talk about how you can set a budget. And I don't know if you know this or not, but whenever you get accountants together, funny things happen. And what I want to share with you before we start giving you different ways to make budgets and put them together, I want to share with you, obviously, what your objective is as a business owner or manager is to spend the minimum amount necessary. That's an important term, minimum amount necessary, because anything that we spend above the minimum amount necessary to help us achieve our objectives, that comes directly out of our pocket, okay? So that's the first thing that we need to keep in mind. That's what we're looking for. Second, there are two other criteria that will help us determine how much we need to spend. First and foremost is knowing the lifetime value of a customer. If I know how long I'll have a customer, how much they'll spend with me, and over what period of time they'll spend it, it helps me determine how much I'm willing to invest to acquire a new customer. So knowing the lifetime value of the customer, what it means to my business, that helps me dictate some decisions I might want to make as to how much I want to invest in acquiring that customer. Now, obviously, business life cycle can also factor into it. A new company, new product releases, things along that line. There may be certain situational things happening in your business that require you to make different decisions than you might normally make. We call that in the business lifestyle category. So those are three criteria about how much you should spend that I'd like you to keep in mind. Now, let's talk about ways to calculate budgets, and I'm going to give you 11. Now, there's been many books that have been written on the topics. In fact, in doing some research to prepare for this webinar, I found 15 different ways that schooled, learned individuals are giving companies ways to calculate budgets. All right? What I'm going to do is go through the most 11 common ones that we see that we're familiar with. You'll notice on the screen here, I'll talk about each of them in just a second. Those that are in the more maroon shade or the red shade are those that are more popular. And the first that you see listed there is intuitive. You know what intuitive means? Well, that means whatever my gut tells me. The highest ranking person, the person that controls the funds, they're the ones that sets the budget on an intuitive type thing. and that's using their experience, their intuition, their gut feeling. That's what's an intuitive method of calculating how much to spend on marketing. It's very common. You're going to find in a minute we don't like that method, but the intuitive method is a way that a lot of people do. You know, especially in larger corporations, is to maintain the previous spend amounts. So we spent X amount in marketing last year, let's spend that this year. You know, some companies that are progressive may adjust that amount for inflation, but basically year after year after year, budget amounts are based upon historical previous spends. And, you know, that as well as the third item that you see there, percentage of past sales, you know, that's taking a percent of your past sales volume and allocating that to marketing. You know, the problem that I don't like with the percent of past sales and that I don't like about the maintain the previous spend is those are backward looking, okay? In other words, what we're doing is we're basing our future actions based upon what happened in the past, and that could be okay. That in and of itself is not necessarily bad, but the point of business is to try to do better and to grow. Because if we aren't growing and doing better, in many instances, for many of us, that means we're falling behind because we can't bank on our competitors taking that kind of an attitude. So those are some of the issues that I have with the maintain previous spend and the percentage of past sales methods of calculating budget amounts. Now you'll see next is what's affordable. And that is simply taking an account of cash flow and making some decisions, okay, how much can we really afford to spend on marketing? And that will become our budget. Some companies will use an in-the-bank methodology. How much do we have in the bank? And what percentage of our bank savings account do we want to invest or allocate for marketing budgets? Now the sixth method, number 6, that you see on this slide is a percentage of gross margin, and that's very simply what it says. A percentage of the gross margin dollars that you bring into your business is allocated as part of your marketing budget. Those are 6 methods. I'm going to go through 5 more in just a second on the next slide. 2 of those are very, very popular. We see a lot, the intuitive method and the affordable method. So let's go to the other 5. By far the most popular is a percent of forecasted sales. That's simply, again, what it says, where you forecast your gross sales dollars. You allocate a percentage of that dollars to marketing, and it is by far the most popular method that we encounter and that in our research that we could find others are doing. We'll talk a lot about the percent of forecasted sales methodology in just a minute. Now you'll find the other 2 that you see listed there, the fixed cost approach per unit or a cost per customer. Those are stemming primarily from lifetime customer value calculations. So if I know what my margin dollars are per units, I know my lifetime value of a customer, I can start to allocate budget amounts that I'm willing to invest to sell another unit or to acquire another customer. Now there are 2 other common approaches that you see there. That's to match the competitors. That's very common with publicly traded companies. You'll find they'll go into financials and see what competitors A, B, C, D, and E are doing, and they'll make some sort of a determination within that competitive guideline. And that may or may not be good. You know, what if your competitors are a bunch of fools? What if your competitors' businesses aren't thriving and healthy? Your competitor will have different situation and circumstances, and I'm going to illustrate that in an example in just a minute. So matching your competitors is one approach, and a task-oriented. What is it that I'm wanting to accomplish, and how much will I want to invest? And a task-oriented approach you'll find is very, very common in new product releases. Okay, I have this new product. Where do I want to be over what period of time, and what is it going to take to get me there? So there are 11 different ways that companies are commonly establishing budget amounts for marketing. There are 5 that are more common, and we're going to examine those a little bit. The intuitive method, as I told you, is relying on the gut instincts of who's ever controlling the dollar value or the purse strings. Okay, that's simply what the intuitive method is. That's where you sit down, whatever things that you want to consider, you come up with a number. The affordable is just what it says. And you'll see the affordable method is commonly practiced in households, okay, especially with discretionary purchases. They total up what their commitments are. They total up what's brought in, whatever's left over. They can start to allocate in an affordable fashion to different budget things, and companies do the same. Now I'm going to hop. I told you a little bit about matching competitors and a task-oriented approach. We just discussed that on the previous slide. So let's go into a little bit more depth right now over this methodology that's used by most companies, and that's a percent of forecasted sales. So I do my sales forecasting. From my sales forecasting, I come up with a budget figure. That budget figure is a percentage of these forecasted sales. So what do? Well, let's kind of go to our next slide, and we'll talk about that right now. And here we go. What we have found, not only in our practical application of helping companies now nearly 30 years, my friends, I've done more budgeting and forecasting for marketing dollars than I care to tell you. And over the last 6 years, we have looked at literally hundreds of different companies' budgets. And we'll find variances by industry, but generally 2 to 8%. 2 to 8% of forecasted sales was being allocated to marketing. Now, many of you are familiar with the world-renowned consulting firm McKinsey. You'll see McKinsey's studies across the globe, especially with publicly traded companies. They're on record that a good rule of thumb is 5% of your forecast sales to be allocated to your marketing and advertising. Now, another method that I think you might find very valuable for you is to talk to your accountant. In fact, if I was consulting and advising an accounting firm, what I would do is ask them to benchmark certain performance indicators of the successful companies that they work with. Companies that are growing, that are thriving, and most importantly, that are similar to yours. And find out one other consideration that you could use under this percentage of forecasted sales method is to find out from accountants what other successful companies are doing and how much they're allocating. Okay? So general rule of thumb, 2 to 8% is what we see very commonly in our industry, in the automotive industry. You'll see that it varies a little bit depending upon whether your strategy is more margin-based or more volume-based. Okay? If I'm moving a lot of volume, that might, and I'm going to show you a great example. We'll cover that in just a second. But 2 to 8% roughly. McKinsey, they're on record at 5%. And again, we find this to be a really good area to ask your accountant about companies that are similar to yours and what they do and who they sell to and maybe geographic area that you may be in. You know, it's neat. We have a whole variety of you that are on the call, everything from car dealers to auto repair centers. So we'll have retailers, there's manufacturers. Different industries have different ranges. Talk to your accountant. They'll be able to help you a little bit. Now let's talk about a specific industry example. All of those retailers that you see on the left-hand side of the screen, I'm sure you're all familiar with. Now, I think you know in the retail category, and let's just really take a look at Walmart, Target, and Macy's. They're all retailers, right? And they're all predominantly, now Walmart obviously is into groceries. Target's starting to get into groceries. Macy's is not there yet. But on average, this is a percentage of gross sales that this company allocates to marketing. Now you look at 0.4%, and on a percentage basis, that doesn't sound like a whole lot until you understand what Walmart's global gross sales volume is. And then, by golly, that buys a whole lot of marketing. Now, what's Walmart built on? Well, as you see on their tagline, save money, live better. We know that Walmart's the low price position leader in the marketplace. So Walmart's got a high volume, low margin strategy. The volume that they do is significant, so you see obviously a lower percentage of the overall gross that's allocated in that fashion. Now as we move a little further up the retail line, you'll see that Target comes in next at 2%. And Target, as you know, is a little bit more upscale. I don't need everybody writing me, and we're not here to debate Target versus Walmart or anything like that. But, their pricing's a little bit higher. Their margin structure is a little bit different. So Target on average is doing 2% of their gross sales on their marketing budget. Now Macy's, a higher end retailer, higher in goods, higher in margin dollars, all sorts of factors involved with what Macy's is doing. Macy's allocates about 5%. So people have different volume and margin strategies that can impact what they're allocating. The total volume of the gross, if you're doing a percentage of sales basis, obviously the total volume of your sales, that can also be a factor that will impact some of these examples in which you're going to allocate. So let's go to my next slide that I'd like to cover with you. And this is a really neat formula that was developed by a man named Ray Williams. And I really like it for retailers because in retail, your location could be critical. And you may pay an arm and a leg to have your retail store located where it is because it brings in so much traffic and volume to you. So Ray Williams developed a budget formula that very candidly is getting a lot of traction in the marketing world. And his formula is pretty simple. It's 4 steps, actually 3 steps, and then you get your end result. First, take 10% and 12% of your projected gross sales. Multiply those numbers by your markup, and I really want to emphasize your markup percentage, not your margin, okay? Your markup percentage, not your margin. Most of us talk margin dollars, okay? So I'm talking markup here. If you have any confusion between markup and margin in your mind, simply Google it, okay? Multiply by markup and then subtract your annual costs associated with occupying your building. Rent, mortgage, cleaning, utilities. Subtract that. The conclusion is that you will have your low and your high budget amount. Okay? Your low and your high budget amount. Those 3 steps that you see there, right there on the screen. And yes, we will be making copies of this available to you. Technology works the way it should. You'll have a nice video recording. You'll get to see every slide and all the narrative and everything that happened on our today's session. So that slide is there, a nice, neat way to calculate budgets. So my friends, what we really did is we gave you 12 different ways to calculate a budget. And what I want to point out to you is this. The most important budget rule is having a budget and a plan is more important than having the right number. Okay? Here's the point. Having a written, thought-out strategic plan along with corresponding expenditures is the most important step you can take. Don't get wrapped up in identifying the magical number. Get wrapped up in creating the right kind of plan and the budget to support the execution of the plan. If you do that and you keep your focus there, you're going to be in really good shape. Now, let's talk about, we've gone ahead and calculated this budget. Where should I be spending my money? And so I called up my friend. She pulled out her crystal ball. We started doing some looking into that. And we came up with this magical answer about where you should spend your marketing dollars. And here's our brilliant 2-word conclusion. It depends. Okay? How you allocate your marketing dollars depends. And it depends on certain things. It depends on what your business objectives are. who your audience is and how you can reach them, where they hang out. Third, the market area in what you compete in. Are you international? Are you national, regional, local? Are you in a highly competitive niche? I'm sorry, are you in a highly competitive arena? Or are you in a really defined niche? All of those things within that market area can influence how you allocate your marketing dollars. We already talked about the business life cycle, gang. You know, if I'm a new startup or I have a new product release or anything along that line, that can really dictate how much money I might want to allocate of my budget, or what kind of a budget I even want to create. And last but not least is this. You know, you need to have the ability to make an impact. You know, I see too many people in their marketing, they're kind of like they've got a gallon of paint. And that gallon of paint, instead of trying to paint one wall really well, they want to try to paint the whole house. And they end up spreading the paint so thin that you really have no impact. So you want to understand that where you allocate your marketing dollars, you want to be able to have an impact there. So if you only have the money to have an impact in 2 marketing channels and you really think you should be in 5, my advice, work the 2, do well in those 2 channels, make your profits, and then reinvest it so you can move to others. All right? One last point. I don't want to beat this to death, but I really want you to get it because a lot of companies miss the boat. You can't be everywhere. You need to determine where these dollars are going to drive profit. Deal with that. That's where you want to be looking when you start to factor allocations. I'm going to show you 3 or 4 different studies. I'm going to show you one that was done by Google and a few other people. Let's start with the first one, and that is what your peers say. We're going to talk about what your peers say, and overwhelmingly, your peers say, go to the internet. Now, what does that mean? Well, when I was a boy, I grew up in the Midwest, and I have a love of going out to fish. And the one thing that every fisherman knows, if you want to catch fish, you better go in ponds where there's fish. All right, kind of simple. Fish in ponds where the fish are at. Okay? And much like me as a fisherman, I don't dictate which ponds the fish are in. Okay? I didn't make those rules. All I know is if I want to catch fish, I better be dropping my line and hook in ponds that fish are in. And what's happening, my friends, I don't need to tell you, is audiences have flocked to the internet and social media, and all of that means in historically unprecedented numbers. Now, a survey was done by GrowBiz. They're a respected media firm that does quite a bit of media market surveys. This survey is relatively recent, 2010, and it was done of small and mid-sized businesses. Little over 50% of all companies spend money on social media, even those companies with less than $1,000 in an annual marketing budget. So even companies with under $1,000, more than 50%, are spending their money on social media. And if you hang with me, we'll break down on social media how your peers are spending their cash. 20% of all budgets were spent on website and content development. So of the GrowBiz survey, 20% of all respondents' budgets were spent on website and content development for the website. And the survey respondents were projecting that larger percentages of their budget would be spent on web content, social media, email, direct mail, and print. In fact, I don't know if you know this or not, but last year was a record year for the direct mail industry. Now again, we told you, where do you spend your money? Well, it depends. So let me share with you a little bit more what some of your peer studies are revealing. Google has done a B2B study that they released not too long ago, right here in 2011. And that's neat, huh? The little Google adaptation, the Google logo for our hot rodders out there. What this B2B survey that was conducted by Google found is that 64% of all small businesses spent their budget on traditional media, radio, TV. Well, we'll break that down for you in a minute. So 64% spent the budget on traditional media, and 34% spent their budget on digital media. Is that the right mix for you? Well, the magical answer is it depends. I am going to make a generalized statement. I believe that your audiences have shifted to the internet greater than marketing budgets have shifted. My opinion is that for most, not necessarily all, but for most, that we ought to look at reversing the numbers. That roughly 60-65% of our budget spent on digital, the remaining 35% roughly spent in traditional. All right? Now, in this Google survey, of the budget monies that were allocated to traditional media, you'll see the percentage of the budget. That is the percentage of the budget that was allocated to the top 7 expenditure areas. Okay? And I think all of those are self-explanatory. Events and trade shows held very, very strong. Okay? Now, in the Google survey for new media, what you see listed again on the screen is the top 7 spending areas and where people were spending their money in new media. Okay? For those of you who may not be familiar with the term SEM, SEM relates to search engine marketing. Search engine optimization is the art of getting your website highly ranked. That's the SEO part you see above that. SEM includes SEO, and it also includes other things like paid search. Okay, pay-per-click advertising would be in SEM as an example. All right? So I think you all understand this, according to the Google survey, is where your peers are allocating their marketing dollars. And it holds pretty true to what we see in our clients and people that we consult with. Marketing Sherpa, they're another organization. I apologize, this is not the greatest slide in the world, but you can read all of the elements that are there. And again, these slides and this presentation, it'll be available to you free for on-demand access so that you can download it and look at it more at your leisure. You'll see what Marketing Sherpa and their study and published in about a year ago, August of 2010, show where people were spending their budgets. Marketing Sherpa had a little bit broader base. It was not simply small business that was responding, although most of their readership is that. Okay? Now, for my retailing friends that are here, you'll see some different allocations. A neat study done by the e-tailing group. This study just came out. I just got this study about roughly 3 weeks ago. Neat stuff talking about holiday spending and 2012 budgeting for retailers, and you see the allocations that are there. Paid search, much higher for retailers than you see on broad-based surveys for others. Again, probably reflecting the need for more product-oriented searches and people looking to buy now. All right? In other words, if I'm an auto repair center selling oil changes, paid search may make more sense to me than some other marketing channels for possibly a manufacturer. It's just an example off the top of my head. But here's the point. Here is where monies are being spent, both online and offline. One of the things for my retail friends that I want you to take note of is the SMS mobile category. That's going to become more and more important. It's going to become more important to all of us that are on this call, especially though my retail friends are going to see that impact probably a little bit quicker than some of the others. Okay? Now, mobile is something specifically, as I told you, is just coming more and more and more. The smartphones won the battle. You'll find that it will continue to dominate and become more and more ingrained in our lives. Our ATM cards, all of that kind of thing is going to be done through this smartphone. So in mobile technologies, where are people spending money? Gang, the survey results did not talk about percentages of budget. What it did is rank the areas that people are spending money on. So the most mobile-related either apps or interactions are for Facebook and Twitter, followed by a mobile website. That's what an m-commerce site is. Barcoding and QR codes, if you're not familiar with either one. Go to our blog. Go to aftermarketerclub.com/blog. Key in QR codes. Our content manager, Joe Giordano, does a great job of making sure that we give you perfect information on our blog. He's written some neat stuff. He knows a lot about it. There's some neat stuff that you'll find on our blog about QR codes. Mobile apps, collecting text messaging opt-ins, then sending text messaging marketing messages, reminders for oil changes or something along that line. And then also texting transactional support messages, such as, thanks for shopping with us. Here's your product tracking number. Your product was shipped out of our warehouse today. That's an example of a texting transactional message. So for those that are moving into mobile or concerned about mobile, these are where your peers are allocating their mobile marketing dollars. Now, we've gone through studies that were done by, 3 or 4 different groups on where people are allocating their dollars. And, to the nature of this call, my job is to kind of give you different ways or approaches that you can go about establishing a budget. I encourage you to have one because that's the most important thing. And what I want to share with you are our personal experiences as well as surveys from your peer groups, which is what we've just done. Now, there's one thing that's missing in all this, and I pulled my friend Albert Einstein. Well, my friend, who am I joking? I'm not quite that old. Old, but not quite that old. But let's turn to Albert Einstein and all of Albert's equations, and there's one thing that's missing here. And if you stop and think about it, I want you to think about you owning a race car. And when you put a race car on a track for the first time, if you want to win, what do you need to do? You need to test, don't you? You need to take maybe different tires and tire pressure and different setups and all sorts of different things that you need to do to find out what makes that car go fast. And what I encourage you to do is to take about 2% of your marketing dollars and allocate those towards testing. That can either be testing of your marketing messages or different marketing channels, because lots of new things are happening in the world right now, my friends. And much as that race car driver doesn't have a hope of winning without being open to new ideas and open to testing different approaches, you'll never get maximum results unless you do the same. So I recommend about 2% of your budget be allocated for experimental purposes, especially in the day and age that you and I live in. Let me give you some tips. Let's kind of summarize what we've been talking about and try to put our hands around some things that will help you out here. First, to set up a good budget and to know where to spend your money, you need to clearly understand your business objectives. Okay? Define them, write them down. Again, sounds really simple, but you'll be amazed at how the simple things screw up a lot of your competitors. The majority of your competitors, based on my business experience, have not written down what their business objectives are for 2012. They'll tell you they have them in their mind. Okay? Well, you can make a decision what works best for you. Next, allocate and where to spend. Well, know as much as possible about your target customers and where they hang out. It's less expensive to reach them in certain channels. If I'm a retailer, it might be really important for me to have a great location. And so my marketing dollars, in essence, is my rent. And I might not spend other things because I'm relying on that traffic. My point is, know your target customers, where they hang out, and how you reach them. Make sure you define your sales objectives and relating to that what your strategy objectives are for your sales. Then pick a budget methodology. All right? I've done lots of research. I've worked with lots of companies. I cannot tell you that one works better than another. What I can tell you is that if you have a budget and you have a plan, you'll get better results, regardless of how you arrived at the numbers. Kind of simple. Then allocate your budget dollars in areas that offer you the greatest potential for return. Make sure that you're able to dominate. Do not take a gallon of paint and try to paint your whole house. That doesn't work. Use your dollars where they'll generate impacts, where you have enough money invested to be able to move the needle. Allocate them that way, and you're going to know by where your target customers are. And prioritize, gang. Sometimes the key to success in business is not deciding what to do. It's deciding what not to do. Make sure you measure for impacts. Always. It's a big thing. I promise almost every single session you ever come to that I ever deliver, I'm going to talk about measuring. So measure so you understand. That'll help you identify what's working and what's not. It'll help you eliminate waste. Because, again, none of us wants to spend money on things that don't generate results. Okay? If we want to do that, just give it to my teenager. He'll destroy your money for you. And next, as I told you, allocate dollars for experimentation. You're moving in a fast world. You want to find out what things work better than others. Experimentation is one of the ways that will lead you to those answers. Thank you for taking the time to join me. We've been answering questions throughout this session, and I'm going to encourage you to enter your questions that are there. In January 2012, believe it or not, 2012 right around the corner, January 17th is when we're doing our next webinar, and I'm committed. I'm really promising you I'm going to come out in 2012 with both guns blazing. I'm going to share with you 10 things you don't know about marketing that are costing you money, and I'm telling you, it's not going to be your run-of-the-mill junk that you can find on the internet. I'm polishing off some of my better secrets, some of my better insider tips, some things that people have paid big money to help learn and apply, and I'm going to be dusting them out. Some of these things I've never shared in any format before. I'm committed. So tell your friends, if you have friends in the automotive industry and you feel that we give you value in these sessions, please let them know, because I'm going to come out, as I said, both guns blaring, January 17th. Tomorrow, you'll get an update from us. You'll get a link on how you can access this webinar. You're also going to get a link and an invitation on how you can join us on January 17th in 2012. Another thing that I want to let you know is that our director, Mark Patzik, Mark will be getting in touch with many of you, doing a quick survey. We have a 5-question survey. We would like to know what information about marketing you want to learn more about. Your input will help us develop content for our blog, for our webinars, for our newsletters. We provide lots of free information. We want to make sure we're giving you the things that are relevant. So when Mark rings your phone or sends you an email, if you would take 3 minutes out of your day, I really think that you're going to find your 3 minutes will come back to you manyfold in 2012. I really enjoy your emails. I love hearing from you. I like your feedback. I like brutally honest feedback. We're big boys here. We want to give you value. You can reach me at the email address that you see on the screen, Brian@AfterMarketer Club. I also want to encourage you, on our Facebook page, we put information that's fans only. The only way you get it is being there. Case studies, free resources. We'll have specials. And again, we're spending lots of time, lots of attention. We're committed to turn our page into one of the finest marketing pages on Facebook. There are over 800 million people on Facebook, millions of businesses worldwide. We're really setting an ambitious goal. Lots of great stuff. Please, if you're not following us on Facebook, please do yourself a favor. Take the time to do so. We've covered everything today, gang. I've answered the questions that we had come in. As always, thank you for your time. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. I'll see you in 2012. Thanks for joining us today, and best wishes to you and yours.